Activision Blizzard has announced that Destiny 2 will be available on the Battle.net launcher, or sorry, the Blizzard app, or whatever the hell they're calling it. I don't even think the marketing team knows. As a side note, they also said it is still officially called the Blizzard app, and it is not the Battle.net app, even though that's what they actually ended up calling it in the announcement. So that's just a little side bit. We'll talk about it a little bit later. Michael here with another topic video. Now, this is kind of interesting because this is the first non-Blizzard game available on Battle.net. And yes, I am going to call it Battle.net, just like everyone else, because it just makes sense, and it's a name that they shouldn't really be getting rid of. And it's a name that doesn't make any sense to change now, especially since they're hosting non-Blizzard games. Now, the problem with this is the fact that this isn't actually just the fact of, just it being not Blizzard. In fact, it is technically Blizzard. If you remember, Blizzard actually did a sort of connection, or rather merger, with a part of Activision. So basically, it's Activision Blizzard now. And so Blizzard is actually more than just Blizzard. They actually are part of Activision. And this was a huge merger that actually put a bunch of IPs under the Blizzard name, although they haven't really officially been moving towards it. And this seems like the first step for them being like, oh yeah, we're actually going to move towards it and be like, hey, we actually own more than just Blizzard games. We are Activision Blizzard rather than just Blizzard. And they've sort of said like, hey, we're still Blizzard guys, even though they are technically now a part of Activision. And this merger is probably going to actually have a lot more games in the sort of future having under this title. Now, they did announce along with this, as sort of a side note and everything, that they are only planning on, Blizzard titles, aka Blizzard.net titles, or whatever the hell you want to call them. And so basically anything that is Activision Blizzard will only be through this app, and they don't plan on introducing things. They're not like trying to compete with Steam or anything like that. It's just their own distribution platform. Think of it like an Origin for like a publisher, except this publisher is actually just a subset of a publisher. Although I think that Activision could very easily make its own distribution platform with its own sort of unique spin, but they normally go to other places for that. So it's not really that big of a deal, but hey, that is a thing, and this might be actually what they're doing with Blizzard as well. Now, they sort of also had this sort of branding shift for a while, being able to kind of push Blizzard as the main name of Activision Blizzard, and so they've basically kind of like said, hey, we're not actually Activision, we're still Blizzard, because Blizzard has a huge name, and this is also one of the reasons why this is actually quite significant in a lot of ways, because since Blizzard already has a large pushing power, even though there's people like me who just like don't really care all that much, and we're just like, yeah, whatever, it's Blizzard, who cares? It makes some good games, and that's about it, and that's really all that we care about. But, there are some people that are going to follow through with it just because it does have the Blizzard name. This could actually push a lot of sales for Destiny 2. Now, on top of this announcement, well, Destiny 2 is coming out for PC. We've actually known that for a while. One of my friends is super excited for it because he loved the first Destiny, although he did say it was super, super grindy. He also said that he wished he could play it with me, and I'm just playing on PC. So basically, I'll probably be into picking up Destiny 2 just for that. But it is going to be exclusively on the Blizzard.net app thing, whatever, battle app. Whatever I seriously have no idea what they're going to call it. But this is actually an interesting thing because they're sort of pushing into a new sort of area to where they're like, hey, we're actually going to like start kind of pushing our name out there and pushing the IPs that we own and sort of making it so that we have a lot more sort of leverage on the sort of content that we're going to sort of release on our platform, which is actually kind of interesting. And it's sort of a way to get away from the whole distribution platform wars of going on like, oh, we're going to go on Origin, because Origin now hosts a few indie games as well. And so they've been kind of pushing for this. Steam is obviously the god overlord and everything like that of all this types of stuff. But Uplay has been talking about doing some weird things in the future and things like that. Obviously, we'll find out probably more during E3. In fact, we actually have E3 coming up. And so basically, we'll probably end up hearing a few different things from them on this. And it seems like a lot of distribution platforms are trying to push outside of their own games, especially things like Origin and Uplay, because basically, they can't just rely on their own products to push everything. Now, Microsoft hasn't really been doing too much of that either. They have their own open storefront that kind of pushes the whole, we have a bunch of different types of stuff as well. But this does kind of spell disaster for people who don't want to use the Battle.net app. Sorry, Blizzard app. And so basically, this is kind of one of those cases to where you won't be using, or you won't be playing Destiny 2 unless you end up using this app. And that's kind of unfortunate because I don't necessarily like having to use a bunch of different apps to playing a bunch of different games. I would love to be able to be like, oh yeah, I want it through this app and that's it. And yes, you can technically create a launcher through like something like Steam or something like that, or just use something externally that is a universal thing. But at the same time, that's how it goes. But hey, that's how it ends up being. And also on the other side notes, this announcement has also ended up having a lot of smaller side effects as well. And a lot of people kind of getting a little bit overhyped for Destiny as well. So basically, there's ways that you can get Battle.net currency through their games and stuff like that. I guess WoW has like some token system that you can end up using for kind of like a real money for gold exchange, or vice versa. Players basically pay gold to actually get tokens, and these tokens can be used for Battle.net kind of credits. And so basically there was a huge surge in people selling those at the right time to try and push up the hype and everything like that, which is kind of cool. And it's kind of an interesting thing to actually see that there's multiple effects in this than there's just being an announcement. And Blizzard is actually doing a good job of making sure that all of their stuff kind of collides together, and it's actually got some interesting aspects to it if you end up looking at it from a critical basis. So yeah, I don't know. And this, personally, it probably doesn't affect me much. I don't mind buying things on different services. I'm not somebody that's like a Steam elitist or anything like that. In fact, I actually like the fact that Steam is getting some nice competition. This isn't going to be actually any sort of reasonable competition, however. This isn't going to like kill Steam or anything like that. It's not like one of those situations to where there's a new competitor in the market. It's just one of those things to where, yeah, they're just hosting one of their own games, because it is Activision Blizzard, not just Blizzard, although they would love you to think it's just Blizzard, because they make a lot of money off of that, because basically Blizzard has built a name for themselves, and Activision made a nice acquire by making sort of Blizzard part of their company, which is actually a pretty big deal. So yeah, and as a note to the whole Blizzard.net map change, or name change, because this is a shorter topic, I thought I may as well talk about that as well. I did end up noticing that this is sort of one of those things to where it makes no sense to me whatsoever, and this kind of plays into that as well, to where it's just like, why are they trying to change the name? Because Battle.net, according to what I've read, apparently it's been around since like 1996 or something, somewhere around Diablo's online thing, I think. I'm sorry, I'm not a big Blizzard fan, and so I don't know a lot about Blizzard. I'm not somebody who's actually played a lot of Blizzard games. I did play Diablo and stuff like that, and I do play Overwatch and stuff, but I'm not like a huge Omega fan. But even as a non-Omega fan, because this seems like one of those things they would do for like creativity reasons, to be like, oh, we want to make sure that everyone knows like who we are. It's like, oh, well, we're a Blizzard, and we want everyone to know it. But it seems like most people know what Battle.net is. Like, if they play any of those games, they know what Battle.net is. Everyone I know that plays Overwatch that doesn't play anything else, they know what Battle.net is. They know exactly what it is, even though they've sort of tried to brand it and been trying to brand it for a very long time, being called the Blizzard app. Nobody cares. Everyone still calls it Battle.net. And even I forgot that they even had a name and change to begin with. And in this recent event where they announced that Destiny 2 would be on PC, and they were like, hey, it's going to be on, you know, the Battle.net launcher. And it's like, oh, it's called Battle.net. And that just seemed natural to me. And it seems kind of funny because basically there's been several reps that have been like, yeah, by the way, it's still called the Blizzard app. We just used it for this specific case. But the thing is, how long are they going to do that? Because this isn't the first time they've actually called it the Blizzard, like the Battle.net app rather than the Blizzard app. And so I'm curious how long it's actually going to be like a push forward towards it, or if they're just going to have like one of those duplicate names, because they even said in their sort of public statement saying like, hey, yeah, by the way, it's still called the Blizzard app, that it says there's inconsistencies, and so it still says that it's the, you know, Battle.net launcher. If I go ahead and look at it in my start menu, it says Battle.net. It does not say the Blizzard app. And when I open it up, it says the Battle.net connection, yada yada. So yeah, it's still Battle.net. I don't know how long they're actually going to try and fight that naming. I think that they should end up keeping it, because with this whole announcement and everything like that, it's going to get more and more confusing unless they end up making Blizzard into more of a publishing name, sort of like Activision, you know, because Blizzard Activision, or Activision Blizzard, sorry, I said it the wrong way. Basically, this is one of those situations to where it's like, it's going to get more and more confusing unless they end up doing something like that. And still people are seeing Blizzard as a sort of developer, not as a publisher or anything like that. So it's going to cause confusion for a lot of people, because the idea between publisher and developer is already a confusing thing, and the non-general market already has trouble understanding that. If I go ahead and talk about Sonic and be like, oh yeah, well, Sonic team made this one and non-Sonic team made this one, yada yada yada, they don't know what the difference is. Everyone's confused. They're like, what? Sonic wasn't made by the Sonic people? Sort of thing. You know, like when Sonic Boom came out, for example, everyone's like, oh, well, they made a terrible Sonic game. It's like, it wasn't actually the people who make most of the Sonic games. It's just like another team that picked up the IP, and they don't understand that Sega published it, but it wasn't developed by the same people. And a lot of people have that confusion with Bungie as well, to where a lot of Bungie employees actually moved on to other sort of developers and publishers and everything like that. So it's not like, you know, Bungie is not the exact same team that it was when they were making like Halo 1, 2, and 3. It's actually just, you know, a name of a company. And so the developers, the actual individual people, are different, and people don't even understand that they might have switched publishers and everything like that, because I actually see a lot of people now that aren't into the gaming market being like, oh, well, why don't they release the other ones for non-Xbox? And it's like, well, because you know, Microsoft still owns the rights to those because they were the publisher and yada yada. So it's like a big confusing little mess. And I think trying to change the name is just going to make it even worse for them, which, yeah. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. This has been Michael with another topic video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more content like this one. The game in the background has been Geometry Wars 3 Evolved Dimensions, or Dimension. It's Geometry Wars 3 Dimensions Evolved, I think. I don't know. It's got a really long title, and it's very confusing. I never know how to put it in the title of videos, but basically it's Geometry Wars 3. Fun little score attack game. I picked it up not too long ago. I did a whole checking out of it, and it's a super fun game. I really love it and stuff like that. But yeah, make sure to leave your comments below talking about how you think this whole thing is. Are you guys picking up Destiny 2? Because I know my friend's going to force me to pick it up eventually, and so I kind of can see it in my future. I really don't care much about Bungie, and I wasn't the biggest Halo fan either, and so I don't have any nostalgia for that. And I also understand the whole developer differences and the company differences. They've made a lot of stupid statements as well, and their PR is absolutely ridiculous. The fact that Destiny 1 isn't on PC, I think, is stupid because it's like the perfect genre, and I have a feeling it's because basically their marketing strategy was all like, oh, well, we're gonna bank on all these console players that don't have this sort of experience, because we already have experiences like Destiny on PC that are very easy to play. But for example, things like a lot of people ended up comparing it to like Borderlands and things like that because it was a sort of loot shooter. Wow, that was a stupid mistake. A lot of people ended up making it into sort of a loot shooter. It's like, oh yeah, we have, you know, Borderlands. And so basically people could just play Borderlands. And the fact is that on console, at least on the newer consoles, they don't really have Borderlands, but we do on PC. And so I have a feeling that's probably most of their sort of pushing force for that. And what do you think of the name change as well? That was just kind of an added on little topic because I kind of found it hilarious that they ended up still calling it Battle.net. And that's just marketing 101. I definitely think it's probably some marketing guys are like, well, they don't know what Blizzard, it needs to be Blizzard because like we're Blizzard and yeah. And then, you know, he woke up in the morning with a giant hangover and he's like, oh crap, what did I do? So basically, yeah, I don't think it's a very smart move, but hey, you know, in the future, it probably won't matter. In 10 years, nobody's going to care. It's going to be like, oh yeah, well, they changed that name 10 years ago. People were resistant to it, but hey, it ended up changing. But yeah, there we go. Anyways, like I said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to eat some marshmallows. Oh, sorry, they're having a marketing change and they're calling themselves sugary, fluffy squirrels now.